8. Lydia Leon Betua Maria. During July 2018, a 26-year-old exotic dancer from Florida named Lydia Leon Betua Maria was accused of stealing $1,300 out of a customer's wallet during a private one-on-one dance at a club located in Largo. According to an arrest report made from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, Maria made an attempt to leave the club after snatching the man's cash, but was quickly stopped by security. She then allegedly admitted to stealing the money and was taken to jail for suspicion of grand theft. The outcome of the case is currently unclear, but records show that she is not currently being held in state custody, which hopefully means that she squared away her legal case and has moved on with her life. 7. Video shoot gets violent. As the world came spinning to a halt as it coped with the first phase of the COVID-19 pandemic in April 2020, the American rapper Blueface apparently wasn't ready to set his career on hold for the lockdown life. Instead, he invited multiple people over to his home in Los Angeles and planned to shoot a music video. A fight broke out among a group of thong-wearing dancers when two women started ganging up on another. Blueface, whose real name is actually Jonathan Jamal Porter, seemed uninterested in breaking up the disagreement as he stood on the sidelines, watching and filming the altercation with his phone. He was also heard laughing in the background of the video while a few of the producers who were there at the time tried intervening. But the warring women continuously escaped their grasp, continued throwing punches, and went on wrestling one another to the floor. Shortly after the footage went viral online, Blueface explained in a follow-up post that the women weren't really fighting over him. He said that the exchange was sparked by a mix of a lot of Henny and some pretty bad attitudes. The rapper did not reveal how the fight was finally stopped, whether the police had to get involved, or if any arrests were made. 6. Flat tire fatality. 55-year-old Ralph Cross was discovered dead in his Wilson City, Missouri home back in August 2017, after helping a few stranded motorists with a flat tire. Someone shot him in the back, ransacked his home, making it extremely clear that the victim was murdered in a robbery. Witnesses reported seeing Cross talking on the side of the road with 4 women whose vehicle had Tennessee license plates. They were later identified as exotic dancers Brittany Curry, Panisha Taylor, Jonisha Simmons, and Latisha Dotson. The women worked at clubs located in Memphis and Nashville. Investigators found records showing that Cross was at a local tire shop at the time he was helping the women. People who knew the victim closely described him as a kind and caring man who was quick to lend a hand to those in need. Because of this, it didn't surprise anyone that he took time out of his day to rescue 4 strangers that were stranded on a roadside. Cross was last seen alive outside his home early the next morning by a neighbor, who said that they overheard an argument between Cross and 3 of the women while a 4th suspect sat in a car waiting outside. The neighbor also told detectives that he heard a loud noise and tried to see what was happening. He reportedly noticed 3 of the suspects rushing out of the house and jumping into the car not long after the commotion. As they fled the scene, the women allegedly stopped and warned the neighbor not to go into Cross's house. After being identified as the primary suspects in the case, they decided to turn themselves in to law enforcement and were subsequently charged with murder. The accused shooter, Brittany Curry, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to serve 16 years in prison. Records show that Panisha Taylor also served a 2-year sentence at a Tennessee prison and was released back in 2021. But it's unclear whether the punishment was related to her alleged role in Cross's death or not. Based on the lack of prison records for the other 2 suspects, it's unlikely they were convicted of playing a major role in the crime. 5. Yany Rivera Bosa. What was supposed to be a fun visit to a Miami strip club ended up costing one unfortunate Florida man $62,000 in May 2023, when he got so drunk in a VIP room that he couldn't even stand up on his own. He woke up the next day and was shocked to find that several of his banking and credit accounts had been completely drained. According to police officers, the victim received private lap dances from at least 5 separate dancers, including 34-year-old Yany Rivera Bosa. As the women poured shots of tequila down the man's throat, Rivera Bosa allegedly ran off with his wallet and cell phone. The victim finally sobered up enough to get himself home at about 4 o'clock in the morning. But by then, he hadn't noticed that his money was missing. It took a few hours before he realized. He discovered several large unauthorized payments to the club from his accounts, along with transactions that moved money into Rivera Bosa's bank account. Rivera Bosa reportedly admitted to making the transfers herself, but said that the victim gave her permission to send the money. During a search of the suspect's cell phone, investigators saw a text message from Rivera Bosa to her friend and husband complaining that the victim discovered the theft and canceled one of the money transfers. Law enforcement also found evidence that the suspect may have been selling illegal growth hormones and steroids to several of the club's customers. Rivera Bosa was later charged with committing an organized scheme to defraud, fraudulent use of a credit card for $100 or more, grand theft, and selling narcotics without a prescription. Unfortunately, the current status of the case is unclear. 4. Jennifer Lynn Morrissey. After becoming a single mom, Jennifer Lynn Morrissey started dancing at a strip club in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just to make ends meet. In 2013, she began dating a 60-year-old businessman named Michael McNew, who was one of her regular customers. McNew acted as Morrissey's sugar daddy for years, paying her bills and supporting her financially through her drug addiction and run-ins with the law. He also took Morrissey on vacations and bought her expensive presents like cars and motorcycles. The relationship between McNew and Morrissey was on and off. At one point, Morrissey even lived with McNew for a short period of time. But McNew threatened to end things for good in August 2017, after Morrissey got with a new boyfriend who happened to be a member of a motorcycle gang. Around the same time, McNew went radio silent and stopped going to work. He was discovered dead in his home with a gunshot wound to the head just a few days later, after his boss got worried due to his absences and reached out to his family. Text messages from the day of the murder revealed that McNew kicked Morrissey out of his house and said he was going to put her belongings into a storage locker. He also said that he was ready to defend himself and warned Morrissey against coming back to his house. Morrissey responded to this with a threat to cut McNew's throat and gut him like a deer. She even said to get ready because she was on her way. She later claimed in court that she accidentally shot McNew during a fight over his gun, and that he charged at her like a madman with a weapon in hand. The court didn't buy Morrissey's self-defense claim for a second, especially since a friend she called to help her dispose of evidence testified that nothing at the scene looked like an accident. Detectives finally concluded that McNew was shot in cold blood at point-blank range, with the barrel of the gun positioned less than an inch from the front of his face. Morrissey tried to stage the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong, but the evidence spoke for itself. Jailhouse informants also helped to solidify the case against her. Morrissey was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. 3. Lydia Ashley Ross. During the morning one day in December 2011, a father of 7 named Boudreaux Briscoe was robbed and shot by 2 men outside an apartment building in Houston. He was there to pick up his friend, a 20-year-old exotic dancer named Lydia Ashley Ross, when the ambush occurred. Briscoe's cousin told investigators that Ross, whose stage name was Pocahontas, told Briscoe to meet her in the building's courtyard. The cousin was there waiting in Briscoe's truck when he saw the attack. The victim was immediately rushed to the hospital, where he passed away from his injuries a few days later. By the time investigators identified Ross as a possible suspect, she had already gone on the run. According to prosecutors, Ross lured several men she met at her job to her apartment building, where her boyfriend, 24-year-old Kevin Johnson, robbed them. A previous victim, Carlton Donato, told police that Ross and Johnson came to his home and robbed him at gunpoint. Johnson allegedly shot Donato before he and Ross left the scene. Donato survived his injuries from that incident and was able to identify Ross in a photo lineup. She was facing an aggravated robbery charge in connection to Donato's shooting when Briscoe was killed. 3 months later, Ross was captured and charged with capital murder. Records show that she's now serving a 50-year prison sentence for 2 counts of aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. She'll become eligible for parole in 2037. There are many inmates named Kevin Johnson serving time in Texas, but it's unclear if any of them are there for Briscoe's murder. 2. Olivia Bennett. In early 2015, a 22-year-old Ontario man named Alexander Sangwan almost lost his life during a trip to Miami when a BMW plowed into him one morning as he tried to hail a taxi. He was heading back to his hotel after visiting a strip club the night before with his brother, Andrew, who witnessed the crash. The driver hit Sangwan from behind and sped off without stopping. Sangwan sustained a serious head injury, along with shattered bones in his shoulder and leg. He was taken to the hospital in critical condition and put into a medically induced coma. In the meantime, investigators identified the primary suspect as a 26-year-old exotic dancer named Olivia Bennett, who worked at the club Sangwan was leaving when he got hit. She allegedly abandoned her car not long after the crash and went on the run, but turned herself in after realizing a manhunt was underway. Authorities quickly charged her with leaving the scene of an accident. Sangwan regained consciousness almost a month after the crash. While his family was relieved that he'd pulled through and survived, they were devastated after realizing the extent of his injuries. Shortly before the trip to Miami, Sangwan had been accepted to medical school, but these plans were put on hold as he started an extremely long road to recovery. The young man's mom told the Ottawa Citizen that Alex recognized family members and tried to speak to them, but could only manage to mouth words. Doctors predicted that it would take several months or even longer for him to regain his mobility fully and become functional again. His current condition and the outcome of Bennett's criminal case are unknown, but hopefully he recovered and was able to pursue his life goals. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Felicia Blakeley. In August 2022, 2 families' lives were unexpectedly turned upside down when 34-year-old Raymond Goodwin and 35-year-old Claudel Doc Christmas were robbed and killed at Goodwin's apartment in Atlanta, Georgia. Goodwin's sister, Carletta Jones, was speaking on the phone with one of the victims at the time and could hear women in the background saying, get the money," after shots were fired. By the time Jones arrived at Goodwin's home to see what was happening, he and Christmas were already dead. That summer, Atlanta's club scene was booming. Robberies were on the rise, and men like Goodwin and Christmas, who carried large amounts of money during their outings, were often the primary targets. There were no signs of forced entry into Goodwin's house, leading detectives to believe the victims knew their killers and welcomed them inside. Jones told detectives that her brother and Christmas had been hanging out with some exotic dancers, nicknamed Peaches and Snow, but she didn't know the women's actual names. 2 days later, 29-year-old Lemetrius Michi Twitty was also found robbed and killed in a similar fashion. A gold Nissan Maxima he'd recently rented was missing from his driveway. Like Goodwin and Christmas, Twitty was known for visiting the city's clubs often. Shell casings at the scene matched the bullets that had been used to kill the previous 2 victims, leading investigators to believe that all 3 victims were targeted by the same suspects. A break in the case finally came about 10 days later, when a fast food worker called 911 to report a few suspicious customers. The incident came during a string of burglaries at the fast food chain, and the company's employees had been warned to keep an eye out for strange behavior. Officers arrived and found 18-year-old Felicia Blakeley, or Peaches, hiding in the bathroom with 20-year-old Armesia Irvin, or Snow. 2 guns were also discovered hidden in the bathroom's toilet tank, and a Nissan parked outside the restaurant was identified as Twitty's missing rental car. During questioning, Blakeley admitted to killing Goodwin, Christmas, and Twitty. She also confessed to several of the fast food burglaries. Irvin admitted to her role in the crimes as well. Blakeley claimed that she and Irvin went to the murder victims' homes with plans to rob them, but she tried to shift the blame onto her pimp, Michael Berry, claiming that he'd forced her and Irvin to commit the robberies. Berry was never charged in connection to the killings. In 2004, Blakeley pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life without parole. Irvin also took a plea deal and admitted to a lesser charge in exchange for a shorter sentence of 14 years to life.
Number 11. Dandre Powell. One day in 2021, while providing a ride to a Lyft customer in South El Monte, California, 67-year-old rideshare driver Paul Liao suddenly found himself being robbed at gunpoint by the man sitting in his back seat. Dashcam footage showed the suspect demanding money and grabbing the driver's phone in the parking lot of a gas station. The armed thief also allegedly tried to steal the car, but Liao managed to talk him out of it. In addition to having his phone stolen, Liao handed over his wallet, which contained more than $1,500 in cash. He was struck in the face with the robber's gun at least twice during the encounter, leaving his face bruised and bloody. The case gained widespread attention after Liao's daughter-in-law created a crowdfunding campaign to help raise money for medical bills and to replace the stolen phone and money. In just 1 week, more than $32,000 in donations poured in. It was far more than Liao or his family expected, and they were grateful for the community's help. Police identified the suspect as Dandre Lawrence Powell with help from the public and arrested him in connection with the incident. Number 10. Sher Moody. During a shared Lyft ride in Miami Beach in 2018, a customer was allegedly kicked, slapped, and scratched by a fellow passenger in an unprovoked attack. The victim, 57-year-old Jose Gonzalez, said that his attacker got upset at the driver for picking him up and made some extremely rude, derogatory remarks. He accused Sher Moody of kicking him in the head with her high heel, causing a puncture wound. According to police, Moody seemed intoxicated and became belligerent toward the driver when he refused to take her through a drive-thru for fast food. When she assaulted Gonzalez, the driver decided he had had enough of her behavior. He pulled over, removed Moody and her friend from the vehicle, and drove Gonzalez home. Authorities charged Moody with felony battery. While she dealt with her legal case, Gonzalez filed a lawsuit against Lyft for allegedly failing to protect him as a customer. Number 9. Brandy Latrell. A Lyft ride that started out like any other quickly turned violent for driver Brandy Latrell after she picked up a young man in Jackson, Mississippi one day in 2021. She made small talk with the passenger, who told her he was on his way to his job at a fast food restaurant. Out of nowhere, the customer pulled a gun and ordered Brandy into the back seat of the vehicle. He took her phone and credit cards, drove to a remote wooded area, and shot her at least 6 times before leaving her for dead with bullet wounds to her legs, arms, and shoulders. At 36 years old, Brandy thought her life was over, but she mustered up the strength to crawl to a residence nearby, and they called for help. She underwent emergency surgery and miraculously survived, and was coherent enough to provide law enforcement with information about her alleged attacker, Dontarius McGee. Authorities charged the young man with carjacking, kidnapping, aggravated assault, and armed robbery. McGee reportedly confessed to the crime during questioning. Brandy had to learn how to walk and do other basic things all over again. She made a full physical recovery, but still battles with the emotional trauma of what she went through, although she made it clear during an interview with WJTV that she does not let the suspect control her thoughts or her life. In addition to driving for an all-female rideshare company, Brandy is now an advocate for rideshare drivers who campaigns to raise awareness about safety. Number 8. Kevinroas. In early 2022, authorities in Miami Beach, Florida accused a 28-year-old Lyft driver named Kevinroas of brutally attacking a tourist from Texas after she requested a ride from a bar to her hotel. The woman had ordered the car when she started feeling sick and decided it was time to call it a night. She later claimed that she fell asleep during the ride and woke up to realize that Rojas had allegedly passed by the hotel and was continuing to drive around. According to a police report, the driver parked at some point and climbed into the back seat, where he proceeded to attack the victim. She told police that she was too intoxicated to fight him off and that he dropped her off at her hotel after the assault. Rojas was charged with battery and was immediately removed from the lift platform once the company learned of the allegations against him. He was initially held on $500,000 bond, and the police report claimed that surveillance footage was consistent with the victim's claims. But the state attorney's office dropped the charges less than a month later, citing contradictory evidence. Number 7. Gary LaVine. Something appears to have gone horribly wrong for 74-year-old Lyft driver Gary LaVine after he picked up a customer in Delray Beach, Florida in early 2023. It was the last his family had seen or heard from him. Over the following several days, LaVine's red 2022 Kia Stinger was seen in parts of Florida he had no reason to be in, including the northern region of the state. It was then spotted in North Carolina, prompting federal authorities to alert local law enforcement to be on the lookout. A high-speed chase ensued as the police pursued the car across 3 counties. The Kia finally came to a stop after running over some spike strips in Ellenborough. As I'm sure you've figured out by now, the man behind the wheel wasn't LaVine. In a last-ditch attempt to evade authorities, he tried to flee on foot, but deputies quickly caught up with him. They identified him as 35-year-old Matthew Flores, who was wanted in connection with a homicide that occurred about a week before LaVine went missing. He was taken to jail for a parole violation along with charges of eluding law enforcement, speeding, and intoxicated driving in North Carolina. Flores also faces charges in connection with the homicide in Florida, and his role in LaVine's disappearance is under investigation. The missing man's family members told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel that they were unsure whether Flores was a Lyft customer or how the car came into his possession. Number 6. Tevin Kimbu. During an early morning shift in Boynton Beach, Florida one day in 2021, Lyft driver Tevin Kimbu collided with a motorcycle and then hit a tree with his car. After making sure that the man on the motorbike was okay, Kimbu went back to his car to check on his passengers. The motorbike rider, 38-year-old Michael Radler, allegedly approached Kimbu with a knife measuring at least 12 inches, 30.5 centimeters long, and attacked him. Witnesses recalled seeing Kimbu fall to the ground as Radler got on top of him and slashed and stabbed him repeatedly, puncturing one of his lungs and cutting a large gash from his temple to his jaw. The victim was left covered in injuries, including defensive wounds he got from trying to fight off his attacker. Kimbu's passengers searched for police while the suspect fled on his bike. Authorities caught up with Radler less than an hour later and booked him into the Broward County Jail on suspicion of attempted first-degree murder. The motive for the unprovoked attack remains unclear. Number 5. Abdul Khan. 71-year-old Abdul Rauf Khan was working as a Lyft driver in Washington, D.C. in 2022 when he stopped answering his family members' phone calls. It was highly unusual, since he spoke with some of his loved ones as many as 2 or 3 times per day. Khan's family filed a missing persons report, only to soon learn the horrifying news that he had been found shot in the middle of a road in Maryland. His car was nowhere to be seen. Khan was rushed to a nearby hospital, where he died several hours later. The beloved driver's community shared in the devastation of Khan's relatives, who were left wondering why someone would possibly want to hurt him. As they grappled with their newfound grief, the family tried to locate his car. By the time authorities caught up with the vehicle or the suspects, they had committed another carjacking. 3 young men were arrested in connection with the brutal murder. One of them faces charges of first-degree murder and carjacking, while the other 2 are accused of less serious crimes. During questioning, the man accused of killing Khan allegedly admitted to shooting the victim multiple times after being picked up as a customer. He's being held without bond as the case works its way through the court system. Number 4. Ingram Davis. On what started out as a normal day in 2020, 34-year-old Ingram Davis left his grandmother's Detroit home to pick up a Lyft customer. When family members stopped seeing him over the following days, they mistakenly assumed he was staying with other relatives, but they eventually began to realize that none of them had heard from Ingram, and and that something was very wrong. They tried to reach him through text, but received bizarre responses. One message said, "Dodge journey," while another quoted the Bible verse, 1 Samuel 18:2. The scripture reads, "From that day Saul kept David with him, and he did not allow him to return to his father's house." When another family member texted Ingram, they received a message stating "Dodge journey" and another ominous Bible verse, Ecclesiastes 3:7, which reads, "A time to rip apart, a time to tear apart, a time to be quiet, and a time to be silent." Ingram's mother, Sylvia Anderson, told local station WXYZ that when she tried calling her son, a man named Steve answered and said it was his new number. He refused to interact after that. Ingram's relatives reported him missing to both law enforcement and Lyft, but they told Fox 2 Detroit that they kept hitting roadblocks with convincing anyone to investigate with the sense of urgency they felt the case deserved. A spokesperson for the Detroit Police Department reassured that the agency was doing what they could, but that they had no information to believe Ingram met with foul play. Months later, the family said they were still struggling to get authorities to pay attention to Ingram's disappearance. He remains missing to this day, and it's unclear where the investigation stands. Number 3. Rayona Oliver. Rayona Oliver, better known by her stage name Game Over Reedy, was primarily known for her rap music until 2015. But the New Orleans-based musician drew attention away from her talent and toward her parenting skills when she allegedly ordered a Lyft to take her 5-year-old to school. According to authorities, Oliver put the child in the car and told the driver she wouldn't be joining them for the 8-mile, 13-kilometer drive. She then went back inside her house. Instead of taking the kid to school, the driver went to a sheriff's office and said that he had told Oliver he couldn't transport an unaccompanied minor. The suspect ended up turning herself in and was charged with child desertion. She also had 2 outstanding warrants at the time. In a video that she posted for a short time on social media before deleting it, Oliver explained that she wasn't feeling well that day and thought it would be okay to send her child to school in a Lyft. She also said that the driver charged her for the ride, even though he didn't end up going to the designated destination. Number 2. Ella Goody. 33-year-old Lyft driver Ella Goody was last seen in March of 2022. She told her family she was heading from Louisiana to Houston to drop off a rideshare customer. They never heard from her again. 12 hours later, Goody's car was seen returning to Louisiana. The vehicle was spotted in Texas again the next day, and it was found abandoned in Missouri 3 weeks after Goody's disappearance. A few weeks later, police announced that they were now investigating the case as a homicide. They named 36-year-old Brandon Francisco, the last person Goody was known to have contact with, as a person of interest in the case. But they released few other details, and the case seemed to reach a standstill as Goody's friends and family members prayed for answers. Her best friend Felicia Broussard told Dateline that Ella was looking for a job when the idea of driving for Lyft came up in conversation. Goody didn't like the idea of letting people in her car at first, but Broussard convinced her to give it a try. She was surprised by how much she enjoyed it, but unfortunately it seems as though her fears weren't completely unfounded. Number 1. David Kamacho. While riding in a Lyft down I-95 in Hollandale Beach, Florida one night in 2020, 48-year-old David Camacho asked his driver if the vehicle's windows would stay locked. The driver, Patrick Myrtle, replied that the SUV was set to keep them locked while in motion, but that he could open the back window for Camacho. When he realized the passenger had stopped answering him, Myrtle looked back and realized that Camacho had leapt out the window, bringing his ride from Broward to Miami Beach to a tragically early end. He was hit by another driver and died from his injuries. A Florida Highway Patrol investigation concluded that Camacho, who moved to the US from France in 1998 and struggled with alcoholism, had taken his own life. Earlier that day, Camacho had crashed a car, leading authorities to speculate that he may have recently relapsed. Myrtle was shocked by the incident, especially because up until the moment he climbed out the window, Camacho was acting totally normal, like he was on his way to go enjoy his weekend. The traumatized driver told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel that he was unable to work for a week following the disturbing incident. But he seemed to feel even worse for Camacho's family, whom he extended his deepest condolences to.
Thanks for watching. If your partner was robbed by an exotic dancer during a drunk night out after claiming they were innocently visiting their family, Would you feel bad for them or break up with them? Let us know in the comments below.